Okay, so thank you. First of all, thank you so much for doing this for me.
Sure.
Could you just start by introducing yourself?
Yeah, my name is Heidi McDonald. I'm the Senior Creative Director for an organization called iThrive Games Foundation.
And I've looked a little bit at the website, but can you explain in your words what the company does?
We are a nonprofit organization who works at the intersection of mental health and games for the benefit of teens. And what we specifically do is we try to find ways that games can be used for pro-social outcomes to make teens' lives better and to help them with their soft skills a little bit more. We have three different, I guess, divisions of the company. We have mental health, where we engage directly with mental health clinicians to try to figure out how they can use games
Mm-hmm.
in the work that they're doing with kids. We have an education group which tries to figure out how can we help educators use games as a medium to deliver this kind of content. And my part is to do developer outreach and education to engage the games industry and to design resources that are best practices for designing for things like empathy and optimism, informed by the latest neuroscience and social psychology. And just kind of taking what the science says and figuring out, all right, um, what can we take from this that's applicable to thoughtful game design, and just kind of giving folks some best practices around designing for each of those pro-social concepts.
Is the game industry responsive?
Um, I'm going to say yes and no.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I would say that we are very firmly in the university space. With universities, I'd say that we're very firmly in the indie space with independent developers. It's a little bit harder with AAA developers because they pretty much need a business reason to do anything, and they don't see the business benefit of this. It's our intention to build a business case for it and present them with it to try to get their buy-in a little bit more. We do have individual AAA developers who are very interested in what we're doing and how we're doing it, but often those people are implementers rather than thought leaders. Their job at the game company is to write the dialogue, and they're not in a position to make specific decisions that would include our content or not. They're just like something is handed down to them, like draw a character that looks this way.
Right.
So part of what I'm also doing is to develop high-level relationships where we can have some champions within those circles to kind of help us. So kind of working all that stuff at once.
Uh-huh. Um, why do you like your job? Why is it fun and exciting for you?
We're inventing something new,
Mm-hmm.
and I love that because we are coming up with stuff to help game developers all over the world, and it's stuff that doesn't exist yet.
Uh-huh.
Um, there has not been anyone to combine these particular things into design practices. I think there are many game developers who care about making games for empathy. I think there are people who have given talks about their own experiences and their own opinions about it, but I think we are the ones who can come in and say, hey, the science says this, and because the science says this, here's how we might want to operate in response to that.
Uh-huh.
So it's inventing new things. It's getting to meet new game developers who are doing amazing work all over the world. Uh, getting to talk with people whose work I really admire and find out like the cool stuff behind what they're doing, to gain understanding, to figure out like what can we learn from What Remains of Edith Finch. What can we take from their process that we can put into our resources and help everyone as a collective design better for these things. And also, I really like working remotely.
Uh-huh.
Because my job is probably 50 to 60% travel.
Uh-huh.
Um, September and October specifically, I am gone more than I'm home. So the ability to work remotely is good because I just might not be at home, and so the ability to take my job with me is very important. I have my home and my family is in Pittsburgh, but I have a partner who's in North Carolina, and I'm in North Carolina right now. So it's like
Uh-huh.
being able to work remotely is crucial to my being able to balance my personal relationships in my life too.
Uh-huh. Um, I see that your background was in writing.
Yes.
How did I assume that your career path went from writing to writing into games into this role in the nonprofit world?
Yeah, that's
Ish.
pretty much it. Games
Uh-huh.
is basically my third career. Um, I am what the QA people describe as an edge case.
Uh-huh.
Um, I broke into games when I was 41 years old,
Uh-huh.
and that's not common at all. And I didn't understand at the time that it was not common at all. It was just kind of like everyone's going, "Oh my God, how the hell did you do that?" And it's like, I didn't know it was impossible. I just did it. You know, I wish there was more advice that I had about that, but it wasn't. It was just
Why? What do you think? How do you think you did that? I mean, what's your take on it all?
uh, right place, right time. 20% luck, 80% pester.
Mm-hmm. Pestering people.
Yeah.
Oh,
I was originally a musician. I was a professional musician until my kids were born, and then it was like impractical to be out till like 1 or 2 in the morning playing music. So I
mm-hmm.
didn't do that anymore. I then went into corporate communications and promotions,
Mm-hmm.
and also was being a freelance writer. Then when my third child was born, it was more economically feasible for me to stay home than it was for me to work, which is just, reality
Yeah.
sometimes. And while I was a stay-at-home parent, I was also a freelance writer and an elected official. I served in local government for the
Mm-hmm.
borough of Edgewood, Pennsylvania, as a municipal council person for
Mm-hmm.
6 years.
Mm-hmm.
Um, then in 2008, the recession hit. My husband, who was the breadwinner, lost his job, and so we're both like trying to find jobs like frantically. And in two specific cases, I had an award-winning writing portfolio, but I lost out. I was the second ranked candidate because I had the portfolio, but they had a degree and I didn't.
Oh, uh-huh.
So when my husband got a job, I got angry and I said, I'm never going to be a financial liability to my family ever again. And so when my youngest went to kindergarten, I went to college. I was 39 years old when I went
Uh-huh.
to college. And I went to get a double major degree. One was professional communications to legitimize everything I had already done to that point,
Uh-huh.
and also film and digital media because I wanted to learn new multimedia stuff that would make me more competitive. But also, there's been a massive increase in the amount of films that are filmed in Pittsburgh, and so I was like, I really love movies, and I think I'd be really well suited to doing that kind of stuff. But I ended up taking a detour into video games, courtesy of a conference talk that I snuck into.
Uh-huh.
I crashed the conference talk, and there was a woman talking about video games. And in that moment, I mean, I'd been a gamer all my life, but I never really considered the people who make video games. I mean, I just figured, okay, some kind of programmer is sitting off in some room in Japan or something. I just, assumed that's where the games came from. But I heard this woman talking about her job, and like three things hit me immediately, and those three things were life changing. First of them was, holy crap, video games is a job.
Mm-hmm.
Second of all, holy crap, women do that job. And because I guess it never really occurred to me.
Uh-huh.
And the third thing was, there's a company in Pittsburgh where women do this job.
Uh-huh.
And I became obsessed with being hired by that company. I had my professor invite the woman to our class. I was the annoying one in front, asking way too many damn questions, and I kept in touch with her, and like I'd ask her questions and send her articles and all that other stuff. And right at the point where I screwed up my courage to ask about internships, they happened to be starting a project that was very heavy on content, and the only other dedicated writer in their company was busy on a different project. So that's why I'm like, it was luck and pester, right place, right time. I feel really, really lucky to have had certain people in certain positions holding the door open for me because they saw something in me that I wasn't ready to see in myself.
Uh-huh.
And so one of the things that I try to do now is to hold the door open for other people who I see those things in. I intend to spend the rest of my career paying it forward that way, because I think that's really important. And I also think that there is enough opportunity for everyone. Games is very competitive. For every one person who loses their job, there's literally 100 more people standing in line waiting to take that job. Especially now with the telltale layoffs. There's like all these layoffs going on this month that have left an influx of about 600 extra game developers who are now looking for work. I don't care whether it is a marginalized developer, a white guy, a programmer in Argentina. I believe that games are so big and so important that there's enough opportunity for everybody. So anyway,
you remind me of my non-traditional students that I have. They're always the most demanding because they value their education so much. And
I had to fight to get there. I mean, these girls, I was literally twice the age of everybody else in my classroom. I was in the classroom with 18-year-old girls. I'm 39, and they, they're there because their parents told them they had to go to college, and it's like they don't really care about it. They're just like, I'm just here because I'm supposed to be. And they're like on Facebook the entire time during class. They're not paying any attention. They're kind of half-assing all of their group projects, and but I was like, you know what? I fought to be here. I had to wait half my life to be here, and I'm going to make the most of this. I'm going to learn everything I can, and there's nothing more valuable than a student ID.
Yeah.
Because if you go to any professional person and say, look, I'm a student and I have these specific questions for you about your job, I have never been shut down. Never in my life. Everybody is like, you're a student who's coming to me with thoughtful questions. I'm going to answer you.
Yeah. That's very cool. It's a great story. How do you think the industry's changed since you've been involved with it?
Oh, goodness. Okay, so I'm only a little bit over 7 years in the industry now, and one thing that I've seen is that game writing is no longer enough. You have to know more than just writing. You do have to know some scripting. You do have to know there are people at a lot of the AAA studios, people who write the content are also expected to implement it. So if I write a quest, I need to also know how to go into Unity and place the characters into the world and dictate the path that they walk, and have to understand that too. I think it's getting increasingly rare for writers to only write. I think that they need to have a little bit of extra knowledge. The fact that the best state-of-the-art tools like Unity and Unreal and stuff like that are by and large free to everyone, it is amazing, because now you can literally have anybody make a video game. Anybody who wants to can download the same tool sets that the studios are using and they can make a game, which is amazing, because now you've got all these voices who might not have been heard otherwise. And we're seeing a whole bunch of different games. But what that means to professionals is the bar just went way up, and stuff just got a lot more competitive, because, you could be outclassed if you don't keep up with your stuff and stay constantly learning and pushing yourself. You could be outclassed by some 17-year-old in Bolivia really easily. So it is a lot more competitive. So I see both benefits and scariness to happen with the availability of tools. I read a statistic someplace that there are 20,000 new apps in the App Store every month. So I think that has also had some ramifications for marketing budgets. It's like, how do you even stand out in that kind of noise?
Right.
I've seen a lot of stuff happen with mobile, with monetization, because when I first started in the industry, Zynga was only starting to play with different models of monetization, and now it just feels like, okay, that was 7, almost 8 years ago, and now it's pretty common and pretty expected to open up a free app and have in-app purchases and like here's the stuff that you pay real money for. And back when I started in the industry, we had to do a lot of analysis of what was out there to figure out where should the paywall go. And I think it's a little bit more obvious now about what works and what doesn't work. But even then, audiences are fickle. And, I've seen some games that have been made that are brilliant, brilliant games that, like, nobody knows at all. Then you got a game like Flappy Bird that goes bananas.
Yeah.
There's no telling what's going to hit. I mean, Goat Simulator was probably historically the buggiest game to ever be released, and it was a hit because it was buggy.
Yeah.
So there's that. I also think that things, and this is really sad to say, but I also think that things have gotten a lot more toxic. Not just for marginalized developers and the player base, because, since I joined the industry, we had Gamergate, and Gamergate, even though the mainstream media stopped covering it, it never stopped. It never went away. And, over the last 2 years, where certain kinds of behaviors have been normalized in the United States, we have a lot of resurfacing of those kind of behaviors, both between players, from players towards game developers, and then also inside of game studios. So that's one, thing of toxicity that I see happening. I also see a toxicity about the general disposability of game developers right now that I didn't necessarily experience. I mean, maybe it's because when I started, I didn't know as many people as I know now. And it's like now I'm hooked into like all these people in all these different places. And it's just like games has a real problem of finishing a game and saying, thank you, that was wonderful, you're all fired. Or canceling a game and everyone's fired. And just studios, by and large, do not take care of their people. They, there are people who have to endure a constant cycle of crunch, to be underpaid, fired for reasons that have nothing to do with them every 1.5 to 2 years. It is a rough job. It is not a job that I want any of my children going into, because I just don't feel like there's any job stability in the industry. I myself have been incredibly lucky, and I'm very thankful for how lucky I've been. But I mean, the average game developer has not had it that easy at all. It is very common to see somebody's resume with like 7 jobs in the last 5 years, and it's like the big joke in the industry is how many titles on your resume actually shipped. Because a lot of times you'll be working on something that in the end it's like it, for whatever reason, it was never released, or it was canceled, or the company stopped supporting it after X number of amount of time, and they took it down, so it doesn't exist anymore. I mean, yeah, any number of reasons. And I think that we're seeing an awful lot of passion around the Telltale situation right now, because this is a company that was the toast of the industry and did some groundbreaking stuff with adventure games and story games. Everyone loves their games, loves them. But they made some pretty bad decisions in the studio, and they were just like, oh, with no notice whatsoever, they fired 275 people, and, right toward the end of the month when their rent's going to be due, didn't give them any severance at all, and the contract workers can't collect unemployment, and the people that, many of whom have families, their health insurance is expiring at the end of the month. So it's like, just like that, 275 people at one of the best loved studios in the world, gone, wiped. And I think that's got a lot of people thinking and talking about the disposability of game developers, and, how can studios start to take better care of their people, and like, do we need to unionize, stuff like that. I don't know how that's going to go, but those are conversations that I didn't hear happening when I first started.
How do you think games have changed? You mentioned apps and in-app purchases and kind of developers figuring out sort of where to do that and how to do that, and that's
Hmm.
become a little bit more standardized and accepted.
Hmm.
Any other trends or changes in the games themselves?
Well, AR and VR has definitely become a thing, or rather, I think they're trying to make it a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I I was at odds about Jesse Shell about this because I worked at Shell Games for about 4 years before I came here to iThrive. Jesse Shell has put many of his eggs into the VR basket, and a lot of what he does are VR projects for hire. But I don't know how long it's going to take for VR to be normalized in the consumer base because it's still very largely a rich white guy thing
Mm-hmm.
because they're the only ones who can afford the equipment. And so I feel like there's a bit of a disconnect
Mm-hmm.
between the venture capitalist class and the game developer class and the consumer class because think consumers are I don't think consumers can afford the equipment. I think it's mostly most of the people who own VR equipment are uh, rich techie white geek guys and schools who apply for grants to get a VR headset, and then when they get the VR headset, it just sits there and collects dust because they don't have the kind of content that their school needs, or they're working with a computer from 1983
Mm-hmm.
or whatever. So I think they're trying very, very hard to make VR happen, but know that I don't know that we're ready yet until they can make the costs of the equipment more sustainable for the general consumer base. That's what that's going to take. But like augmented reality, virtual reality are things. Escape rooms and
Yeah.
experiences like that are definitely a thing now. It's like in 2011 when I started in the industry, I think they were just starting to have one escape room pop up,
Mm-hmm.
and now they've got three of them in Pittsburgh, and
Mm-hmm.
that's just Pittsburgh. You've got cities like Los Angeles and San Francisco right now with very large communities of people who do these interactive theater and dungeon experiences that are scripted and that people pay for and all do together. And I think that's something that's interesting that we haven't seen.
Do you think that the gaming industry is starting to recognize the diversity of gamers in terms of age and gender um, and also themes? I think a lot of people's perceptions of games, especially console games, are like shoot 'em up adventure games. We're all familiar with that, and clearly in your research and what you're trying to recommend to schools and therapists and whatnot are games that actually might offer some type of benefit. Do you think the
Mm-hmm.
industry is starting to pick up on that?
Well, there's a couple questions in there. The first one about diversity. Does the industry understand that they need to make more diverse games? I think yes and no.
Uh huh.
Um, I think the indie space is already firmly understanding this.
Mm-hmm.
I think the AAA space is a little bit slower to realize it. I think that there are companies out there that are trying to go about it the right way. There are others who are going about it the wrong way,
Mm-hmm.
and would probably benefit from hiring a diversity consultant to make sure that they're going about things the right way. Because first of all, is recognizing that it's a thing, right? Recognizing that this is something we need to pay attention to. The second thing is, well, how do we fix it? Let's hire a diversity consultant. But then the third thing is actually taking that advice, because you don't want to hire a diversity consultant to say, see, we hired a diversity consultant, and then not actually do anything inside the game.
Right.
Um,
Well, I think too, from the what I meant by diversity also is that gamers are more diverse than
mhm,
what we might perceive. Do you think
mhm.
people are starting to like that? 50, 60-year-old women are gamers, and there's this is not just a teen boy thing.
Right. It's not actually. The Entertainment Software Association has said that the very biggest group of increasing gamers is women over 35, right?
Uh huh.
And so a lot of companies will try to address that by saying, oh, well, those women all love match three games, so we're going to make a match three game or a hidden object game to try to reel in those women who want to do those things. Um, but I think what's needed here is I think we need women in their 30s and 40s to make games for women in their 30s and 40s, because mostly what happens is you'll have a marketing company within a Zynga or a big place like that, not specifically Zynga, but like a company like that, who will have a composite of here's what we think a middle-aged woman gamer looks like, and I'm not sure it's correct.
Uh-huh.
The older that the medium gets, the older the player base is going to get. And this is an industry with a documented ageism problem. They tend to age out around 30, 35. So people who are still in it after 40, it's like, holy crap, you've seen some theater.
Yeah.
Because, people get sick of losing their job every month and a half. People get sick of working 14-hour days. People start to have things like mortgages and families that make it more difficult to sustain the kind of life you have to have if you want to be in games. But also, it's cheaper for companies to just hire a kid out of school because they don't have families that you have to pay benefits for. And the 22-year-olds are like,
Yes.
they all want to crunch hard because they're happy to do it. But the 30-year-olds get to where they're like, why am I really doing this again?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think they want, because they're tech companies, they want to appear young and hip. And I think that when you have a situation where a lot of your leads and your managers are in their 20s, it makes them uncomfortable to manage somebody who's the same age as their mom.
Yeah, right.
So, I mean, there are some issues around ageism that the IGDA has documented. And there's actually an ageism SIG inside of the IGDA now. That's a special interest group, like a club of these older developers who are like, well, how do we handle issues relating to this? And like, shouldn't we be making games for the older gamers? Because the older gamers at this point are 60 years old. I mean, if you think of people who were playing text adventure games, those people are hitting 60 years old now.
Yeah.
That's like, I was playing Pac-Man when I was 9-10 years old. I'm 48 years old now.
Yeah.
I love games just as much as I ever did, but nobody's pointing games at me unless it's a match 3. And I'm like, hell with that. I love the adventure games too. Who's going to make games for my age? You know what? I'll be happy to do that. So there's a lot of talking and a lot of sharing between some of the older developers who tend to either just get out of the industry when they can't get a job, or they accept a position that's way beneath them, both title-wise and income-wise, or they kind of mosey over to academia and they teach.
What do you have any concrete examples or case studies or anything you can think of that relate to the effect that video games can have on players? I mean, I know that you think about this a lot because you're encouraging teachers and whatnot to have kids play certain games that are going to have a positive effect. Do you have any stories that you tell about this, or either positive or negative?
I would say, first of all, there's a lot of bad press. Every time there's a school shooting, everyone is quick to immediately point at video games and say, it is because of those damn shooter video games. The Higher Education Video Games Alliance, which is an organization of instructors in game programs all over the world, put out a really positive statement that included a whole lot of studies saying there has been no scientific evidence to support that games turn people into shooters. That's just not based in science. However, here's a list of studies on the benefits of video games. There are lots. I mean, there was an independent game called Fold It, where the gamers who played Fold It actually solved the human genome by playing Fold It. It was gamers that figured that out. I mean, it was a major scientific advance that happened because people were playing a video game. There's also studies about people with Alzheimer's disease who have had their condition improve from playing video games. Specifically from the work that we do, there was a young girl who, the way we do things is I have a think tank where I fly in the high level people, and we ply them with science, and then we sit there and try to figure out, okay, we're going to think about empathy now, and how do we take the science and turn it into a design resource? And so we crunch all, as much crunching as one does as a resort, and we all just kind of figure out what design tips can we glean from having read up on the science. And so what we end up with is a suggested list that's science-based, developed by experts, and it's like, here are things that we believe are more likely to have players practicing empathy. If they follow that, here's a list of things that if you put these things in your game, they are less likely to present empathy, and it can even take away from empathy. And the way that we test those resources is I do game jams at universities. And my game jams include professional developers, college students, and high school students, because we do ultimately want to help teens. So using all of that as the background information, we went to DigiPen Institute of Technology last September, and we were doing a game jam about empathy. And there was a young girl there. She was kind of shy. She was 17 years old. She was very interested in going to DigiPen, and so she shows up at DigiPen, has never made a game before, has never been to a game jam before. The game that she helps make wins first prize at the game jam.
Mm-hmm.
And so we decided, this is amazing, 17-year-old girl did this, and this, yay, good for her. So we started filming her because we wanted to talk to her. Well, tell us about yourself. Why do you want to be a game designer? None of us was prepared for the story that she told us, which was that the independent game Brothers, A Tale of Two Sons, helped her through losing her sister. Her sister ran away from home and was subsequently murdered by her boyfriend. Mm-hmm. And the game Brothers is about two siblings, a younger sibling and an older sibling, where the older sibling runs away with the bad love interest and gets killed. And so her playing that game was the one thing that helped her feel close to her sister. And of course, by the end of the video, camera's bouncing because we're all crying because we weren't expecting this at all. Uh-huh. And she said that the reason she wanted to be a game designer was because she wanted to make experiences for other people that helped them the way this game had helped her. And so she actually, I was telling this story to the people at DigiPen on our follow-up call. Turned out the guy in charge of scholarships there happened to be on the phone call, and I didn't realize it. She ended up getting a scholarship to DigiPen. So she's a freshman at DigiPen this year. We just went back a couple weeks ago to do our game jam again. And this time, this same girl who was shy, never made a game last year, led a team of her former high school students making a game at the game jam. And it was really thoughtful. It was broken as all hell. But it was very thoughtful, and you could see where she was going with it. You can see that she's got a lot of passion and a lot of design chops already, with design thinking. So that is one case where iThrive has directly impacted the life of the teen, and those are the kinds of stories that are coming out of the work that we do. The game that they made last year is called Returns, and we are doing studies with that game to see if it actually does move the needle on empathy, but we have a little ways to go before we can before we can release any data on it. I mean, it looks promising so far, but you have to vet things, you have to repeat things, stuff like that.
Right.
iThrive does recognize that academic publishing is a problem right now, and we want to encourage scholars to publish the work that they're doing. Mm-hmm. And so we did a special issue of the Well Played Journal through ETC Press last year, and Well Played is not typically peer-reviewed, but we decided we wanted our issue to be peer-reviewed. So I recruited the editorial board myself to make sure that, people had a place to publish. And I didn't realize this, but apparently there are a lot of publications that you have to pay to submit to. You have to pay to be published in, which just is unconscionable to me because it doesn't seem like the greatest way to encourage research or the publication of findings. And so one way that we are advancing the research is we have started our own journal.
Oh, cool.
and we're going to be publishing a lot of those studies. I mean, people are doing some really incredible stuff. There is a guy out of Rochester Institute of Technology who is both a game design professor and a rabbi, and he made this really wonderful board game to use historical religious context to promote community values. And so he was able to write a paper about that, and like, here was my study and here were the design considerations. So we're publishing studies both empirical and rhetorical. So that's how we're specifically promoting the work. And it's like, you can go in our journal and see, like, here are all these fantastic people who are doing all these fantastic things. And like, in some cases it's, here's a game we're designing right now. In some cases it's, here's a game that we did design that we're testing out right now, and here's what the results of our tests are so far.
Oh, that's very cool.
I would say Dr. Jane McGonigal wrote a book called Reality is Broken, and there are a lot of people who poo-poo what she does, but I will also say that there are some really interesting concepts in there about, and concrete examples about ways that games have helped people. Because, a game such as World of Warcraft, you get to be your best self when you're playing a game. So it's like, it talks about the aspirational avatar aspect of games, where games inspire you to be your best self. And by playing a game and role-playing as your best self, that could conceivably have benefits in your real life, make you more confident. There are corporations right now who will accept I was a guild leader in World of Warcraft as legit leadership experience.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Yeah.
So while I am a little bit remiss in saying, here is an exact study that you should look at, I know where all the studies are. That helps. I'm not the scientist on my team. I work on a team of scientists, but I'm the developer outreach person. I'm the one who goes out. It's like, now we've got the resource and we need to infiltrate the games industry with it. And that's what I do.
Well, this is awesome. This is more information than I ever dreamed of learning, but this is awesome. And I want to let you go, but I really want to thank you for participating. And
if you have any follow-ups at all that you want to ask, I'd be happy to answer them. I
will. Well, okay. I'm sure I will. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Have a great afternoon. Talk to you later. Bye.